First Contact's Mockery. Ambassador Sarah Chen stood before the Galactic Assembly's towering crystalline chamber, her ceremonial uniform feeling unnecessarily stiff as thousands of alien eyes studied her with barely concealed disdain. The chamber itself was a testament to the technological gap between Earth and the assembled species. Its walls shifted with living light, while gravity itself seemed to bend according to the comfort needs of each different species present. "The human delegation requests recognition from the Assembly," she announced, her voice steady despite the whispers and clicks of derision echoing through the vast space. The translation matrices carried her words to every being present, though she noticed several representatives deliberately deactivating their translators, a subtle but clear insult. High Speaker Vorax, a towering entity of swirling plasma contained within an ornate mechanical frame, turned what passed for its attention toward her. "Recognition granted, though one wonders why we waste the Assembly's time with such primitive petitioners." Sarah had expected this. Earth's first faster-than-light flight had only occurred 15 years ago, and by the Assembly's standards, humanity was barely more than a group of clever apes who had recently discovered fire. But that was precisely why she was here, and why the data crystal in her pocket felt so heavy with possibility. "The Earth Confederation brings grave news," she continued, ignoring the dismissive gestures from various delegates. "During our initial exploration of Mars, we discovered evidence that—" "Yes, yes," interrupted Delegate Zexex, his crystalline form splintering light into aggressive patterns. "You found ruins. Every species finds ruins on their first extraplanetary excursion. The galaxy is littered with the leftover trinkets of dead civilizations. Did you really come here just to announce that you finally joined the archaeological community?" Laughter rippled through the chamber. Sarah allowed herself a small smile. "Actually, we found something rather specific. Something that concerns every species represented here today." She withdrew the data crystal and placed it in the central projection node. The chamber's sophisticated systems immediately recognized the ancient encoding and sprang to life, projecting a massive hologram that filled the space above the assembly. The laughter died instantly. That's impossible," whispered Vorax, his plasma form fluctuating in agitation. "Those are predecessor glyphs. True predecessor glyphs, not the degraded copies we've all studied." "Yes," Sarah confirmed, "and they're dated less than 1,000 years ago, long after the predecessors supposedly vanished from our galaxy." The hologram shifted, showing a vast chamber deep beneath the Martian surface. The walls were covered in flowing scripts that seemed to move and change even in the recording. But what caught every delegate's attention was the massive piece of technology that dominated the center of the chamber, a device that was simultaneously ancient and more advanced than anything in the current galaxy. "We call it the Nexus," Sarah explained. "And it's not just a relic, it's active. More importantly, it's been waiting specifically for us." The assembly erupted in protests and demands. Sarah stood calmly as the chaos swirled around her, knowing that this was just the beginning. The Nexus had shown them something that would shake the galaxy's power structure to its core, a truth about humanity's role in the cosmic order that even she was still struggling to accept. "Order." Vorax's voice boomed through the chamber, his plasma form blazing with authority. "Ambassador Chen, explain yourself. What do you mean it was waiting for you?" Sarah nodded and gestured to the hologram. "The predecessors left markers throughout our solar system. Subtle changes to our planet's development. Geological signatures that would only be noticeable once we reached a certain level of technological advancement. They were breadcrumbs, leading us to the Nexus. And when we found it—" She paused, letting the tension build. "It recognized our genetic signature. Not as distant descendants or as random inheritors, but as something far more significant." She input another command into the projection node. The hologram shifted again, showing a sequence that had haunted Earth's scientists for months. It showed the galaxy as it existed millions of years ago, when the predecessors were at their height. It showed their greatest achievement and their greatest mistake. The predecessors didn't just vanish. Sarah continued, her voice carrying the weight of this revelation. They transformed themselves. They believed they had reached the pinnacle of physical evolution, so they sought to become beings of pure energy and thought. And they succeeded, partially. But in transcending their physical form, they lost something essential, something they didn't understand until it was too late. The hologram showed the transformed predecessors slowly fading, their consciousness dispersing across the cosmos, despite their desperate attempts to maintain cohesion. But before their end, they had launched one final project, a project involving a primitive planet called Earth. They lost their humanity, Sarah said into the stunned silence. Not human as in our specific species, but the fundamental qualities that all physical beings share. The drive to overcome limitations, the ability to feel deeply, the capacity for both logical and intuitive understanding. In their pursuit of perfection, they engineered these traits out of themselves. She looked around the chamber, meeting the gaze of various delegates. They seeded countless worlds with life, hoping to find or create inheritors who could succeed where they had failed. And on Earth, they found what they were looking for, a species that embodied the very qualities they had sacrificed. A hologram showed the predecessor's final message, written in every major language that existed on Earth. To those who find this, know that you are not an accident. You are the culmination of our greatest experiment, beings who can bridge the gap between the physical and the transcendent. The Nexus is your inheritance, but it is also a warning. What we became still exists in the spaces between stars, and it hungers for what it lost. You are our hope, our redemption, and our shield against the darkness we unleashed. The assembly chamber was absolutely silent now. Sarah took a deep breath, knowing her next words would change everything. The Earth Confederation isn't here to petition for membership in your assembly. We're here to prepare you for what's coming. The predecessor's mistake is returning to our galaxy, and humanity, with all our supposed primitive qualities, may be the only thing standing between existence as we know it and a fate worse than death. She could see the shock, disbelief, and fear rippling through the assembled delegates. But she also saw something else, a growing recognition that perhaps humanity's primitive traits weren't a weakness after all. The Nexus contains knowledge that we've only begun to decipher, she concluded. But what we've learned so far has made one thing clear: the very qualities you mock us for, our emotions, our illogical creativity, our stubborn refusal to accept limitations, these are exactly what the galaxy needs right now. So the question isn't whether you'll accept Earth into your assembly. The question is, will you work with us to save everything you hold dear? The chamber erupted in voices, but Sarah knew the hardest part was done. The truth was out there now, impossible to ignore. Humanity wasn't just another primitive species stumbling onto the galactic stage. They were the designated inheritors of the galaxy's greatest civilization, chosen not despite their perceived primitive nature, but because of it. The real challenge would begin now, preparing for a war against beings who had sacrificed their humanity for power and who now sought to devour what they had lost. But as Sarah watched the assembly dissolve into urgent discussions and hurried consultations, she smiled. After all, humanity had a long history of overcoming impossible odds. And this time, they wouldn't be fighting alone. The legacy beneath. The emergency session of the Galactic Assembly had stretched into its third rotation. Ambassador Chen watched from Earth's newly assigned diplomatic pod as dozens of species argued, threatened, and bargained with each other. The revelation of humanity's connection to the predecessors had shattered centuries of established political hierarchies overnight. "This is preposterous," declared Senior Delegate Crix of the Meridian Consortium, his crystalline form vibrating with indignation. "You expect us to believe that the predecessors chose humans, a species that still wages war among themselves, as their inheritors." Before Sarah could respond, an unexpected ally spoke up. High-speaker Vorax's plasma form pulsed with subtle patterns that the more experienced delegates recognized as concern. I have reviewed the authentication data myself. The Nexus bears markers that cannot be falsified. The question isn't whether the humans are telling the truth, it's why the predecessors made this choice. Dr. James Rodriguez, Earth's leading xenorchaeologist, stepped forward from behind Sarah. His dark eyes carried the weight of months spent decoding the predecessors' messages. Perhaps I can shed some light on that. He interfaced with the chamber systems, and new holograms sprang to life. They showed scenes from human history, not the wars and conflicts that the Assembly expected, but moments of triumph over adversity. The first heart transplant, the moon landing, the eradication of numerous diseases, artists creating works of stunning beauty from primitive materials, scientists developing theories that redefined reality itself. The predecessors didn't choose us because we were perfect, Rodriguez explained. They chose us because we refused to accept limitations. Look at these moments in our history. Each one represents a time when we were told something was impossible, and we did it anyway. The images shifted to show the Martian excavation site where they'd found the Nexus. But more importantly, they chose us because we understand something that they forgot: the value of balance. New data streams filled the chamber, showing complex mathematical formulas and philosophical concepts that the predecessors had left behind. Their pursuit of transcendence wasn't wrong, Rodriguez continued. Their mistake was thinking it required abandoning their physical nature entirely. They sought to become pure energy and thought, divorcing themselves from emotion and instinct. In doing so, they lost the very spark that had driven their greatest achievements. Sarah stepped forward again. We've discovered similar sites on Venus and beneath Europa's ice. Each one contains different aspects of the predecessor's legacy, and each one emphasizes the same point: the power of synthesis, the ability to be both logical and intuitive, to feel deeply while thinking clearly, to dream impossible dreams while building practical paths to achieve them. The chamber's atmosphere had shifted from skepticism to something closer to reluctant fascination. Sarah could see various delegates accessing their own historical records, perhaps looking for similar patterns in their own species' development. But there's more, she continued, her voice growing grave. The Nexus wasn't just a library or a message. It was a warning system, and 3 days ago, it activated. The holographic display changed dramatically, showing the outer reaches of the galaxy. Strange distortions appeared in the space between stars, places where reality itself seemed to warp and twist. What we're seeing, Rodriguez explained, are the entities that the predecessors became. They exist now as beings of pure energy and thought, but their transformation came at a terrible cost. They lost not only their humanity, but their individuality, their creativity, their ability to grow and change. They became living equations, seeking to solve a problem they can barely remember. And what problem is that? Asked Delegate Zexex, their crystalline form refracting light in patterns of deep concern. The problem of existence itself, Sarah answered. In transcending physical form, they gained tremendous power, but lost the ability to truly experience reality. Now they seek to reclaim what they lost, by force if necessary. The distortions we're seeing are their first attempts to re-enter our plane of existence. The chamber erupted in questions and demands for more information. Sarah raised her hand for silence. The Nexus contains technological insights that could help us defend against them, but we can't decode it alone. Each species here has unique perspectives and capabilities that could be crucial to understanding the predecessor's legacy. You're proposing an alliance. High-speaker Vorax's plasma form swirled with complex emotions. More than that, Sarah replied. I'm proposing a synthesis. The predecessors chose humanity as their inheritors, not because we were superior, but because we have the potential to bridge different ways of being. We're asking you to help us fulfill that potential, not just for Earth's sake, but for all life in this galaxy. Rodriguez brought up one final hologram, a detailed scan of the Nexus itself. We've discovered that the device requires multiple species to operate it fully. The predecessors designed it this way deliberately, forcing cooperation between different forms of life. They understood, too late for themselves, that true transcendence comes not from abandoning our nature, but from learning to work in harmony with others who think and exist differently from ourselves. The assembly chamber had grown quiet, but it was no longer the silence of skepticism. It was the silence of revelation, of pieces falling into place. "The entities are approaching faster than we initially calculated," Sarah said into that silence. "We estimate we have less than a standard year before they begin attempting full manifestation in our reality. When that happens, they will seek to drain the spark of life from every conscious being in the galaxy, trying to reclaim what they lost." She looked around the chamber, meeting the eyes, optical sensors, and other sensory organs of the assembled delegates. "We can fight them, but only together. Earth offers all the knowledge we've gleaned from the Nexus, freely and without reservation. In return, we ask for your help in decoding it fully and preparing our galaxy's defenses." "And if we refuse?" asked Crix, though his tone had lost much of its earlier hostility. Sarah's expression remained calm, but her eyes carried the weight of everything she'd learned from the Nexus. "Then we all face the same fate as the predecessors, existing forever as hollow shells of consciousness, forever hungry for the warmth of true life, but unable to reclaim it." The chamber erupted in discussion once again, but this time the tone was different. Species that had been enemies for centuries were turning to each other with thoughtful expressions. Ancient rivalries were being set aside in the face of an existential threat that none of them could face alone. Sarah exchanged a glance with Rodriguez. This was just the beginning, but it was a start. The galaxy was about to change dramatically, and humanity would be at the center of that change, not as conquerors or superior beings, but as bridges between different ways of thinking and existing. The legacy beneath Mars wasn't just technology or knowledge. It was a second chance for all conscious life to achieve something the predecessors couldn't, through transcendence, through cooperation and synthesis, rather than through abandonment of their essential nature. Now they just had to hope they could decode enough of that legacy in time to save everyone. Silent Guardians awaken. The Europan research facility was unlike anything humanity had built before. Combining architectural elements from a dozen different species, it hung suspended in the liquid ocean beneath the moon's icy surface. Dr. Elena Santos watched through the quantum blast viewport as teams of humans worked alongside their alien counterparts, each bringing their unique perspectives to understanding the predecessor's legacy. "The energy signatures are increasing again," reported Zix, their crystalline form refracting the facility's lights in patterns of concern. The Meridian scientist had become one of Earth's strongest allies in the 3 months since the assembly revelation. Elena nodded, studying the holographic displays that filled the chamber. The distortions at the galaxy's edge were growing more frequent and intense. "How long?" "At current progression rates, we have 4 months at most before the first full manifestation attempt. Not the year we initially estimated." The news should have been devastating, but Elena felt a familiar surge of determination. Humanity had a long history of performing their best work under impossible deadlines. "Show me the latest decode from Section 7, she requested. The facility's AI compiled the data, presenting it in a format that accommodated both human and crystalline perception methods, another small triumph of cooperation. The hologram revealed new details about the massive structure they'd discovered beneath Europa's ice. Unlike the Martian Nexus, this installation appeared to be more practical in nature. Early analysis suggested it was some kind of defense platform, though its exact capabilities remained mysterious. "Dr. Santos." The call came from Vorax's daughter, Lyra, her plasma form streaking through the facility's corridors with unusual haste. "We found something. In the genetic archives." The genetic archives had been one of their most puzzling discoveries. Vast databases of DNA and other biological codes, stored in crystals similar to those used by the Meridians. Their purpose had been unclear until now. Elena followed Lyra to the archive chamber, where a team of mixed species had gathered around a central console. Dr. Rodriguez was there, his expression showing the particular intensity he got when making a breakthrough. "The predecessors didn't just leave us messages and technology," he said without preamble. "They left us guardians. Look at this." The display showed complex genetic sequences that seemed to shift and change as they watched. "These aren't just records," Rodriguez explained. "They're templates. The predecessors created synthetic life forms designed specifically to combat the entities they became, but they couldn't activate them immediately. The Guardians needed time to evolve, to develop alongside natural life forms." "Where are they?" Elena asked, though she was beginning to suspect the answer. Rodriguez grinned. "Look at your own genetic code." New data flowed across the screens. Human DNA sequences compared against the templates in the archive. The similarities were stunning, but it was the differences that told the real story. "The predecessors didn't just choose humanity," Rodriguez said. "They helped create us. Not directly. They simply introduced certain genetic potentials into our evolutionary line. Potentials that would only activate under specific conditions. Like contact with their technology," Elena breathed, understanding dawning. "The Nexus didn't just recognize our genetic signature, it triggered something within it." "Exactly. And we're not the only ones." He brought up comparative analyses of several assembly species. "Each of us carries different aspects of the Guardian templates. Humanity got the core command sequences. But look, the Meridians have perfect crystalline memory structures. The Varaxians can manipulate energy directly. We're all part of the same defense system." Six concluded, their crystalline form vibrating with excitement. Different pieces of the same puzzle. Helena was already extrapolating the implications. "That's why the Nexus required multiple species to operate it. We're not just using it. We're meant to merge with it, to become something new." The facility's alerts suddenly blared to life. On the displays, the distortions at the galaxy's edge had taken on new patterns, more focused, more purposeful. "They know," Lyra pulsed with alarm patterns. "The entities can sense that we're close to understanding." Elena straightened, years of crisis management kicking in. "How many of the defense platforms have we found?" 7 confirmed locations in this solar system alone, Rodriguez reported. Similar reports coming in from other assembly expeditions across the galaxy. "And the transformation protocols in our DNA. How close are we to understanding them?" "We can initiate the process," Six answered. "But it would be dangerous. We've only decoded about 60% of the safety protocols." Elena looked around the chamber at the assembled beings. Humans, Meridians, Varaxians, and others, all working together in ways that would have seemed impossible just months ago. Each of them carried part of the predecessor's final gift, each essential to the galaxy's survival. "We don't have a choice," she decided. "The entities are coming, ready or not. Begin evacuation of all non-essential personnel from the platforms. I want volunteer teams formed. Mixed species, best and brightest. We need to." Her voice trailed off as new alarms sounded. The main display showed a massive distortion forming at the edge of their solar system, far closer than any previous manifestation attempt. "They're not waiting." Lyra pulsed in alarm patterns. "This is a full incursion." Elena felt something stir within her DNA, ancient sequences awakening, responding to the proximity of the threat they were designed to fight. Around the chamber, others were showing similar signs. Zix's crystalline form was emitting frequencies they'd never displayed before. Lyra's plasma state was organizing into complex new patterns. "All personnel to defense platforms," Elena commanded, her voice carrying new harmonics that seemed to resonate with the very structure of the facility. "Begin transformation protocols. And send word to the assembly. It's starting." As the chamber erupted into activity, Elena caught her reflection in one of the quantum blast panels. Her eyes had begun to glow with an inner light, and patterns of energy danced beneath her skin. The Guardians were awakening, not as separate entities, but as aspects of the existing species, just as the predecessors had planned. The entities had abandoned their physical forms in search of transcendence. Now, the galaxy would be defended by beings who had achieved true transcendence by embracing their physical nature and working in harmony with others. Alina smiled as she felt the changes spreading through her body. The real war for the galaxy's future was about to begin, and humanity would face it as they had faced every other challenge. Adaptable, determined, and most importantly, not alone. The silent guardians were awakening, and the entities that had once been the predecessors were about to learn why evolution had favored those who held onto their humanity. Breaking point. The once pristine halls of the Europan facility had become a battlefield, not against physical enemies, against reality itself. Dr. Elena Santos watched as space twisted and writhed around the defensive perimeter, the entities probing for weaknesses in the fabric of existence. The transformed defenders held their ground. Humans glowing with internal energy worked in perfect synchronization with crystalline meridians and plasma state for actions, their combined abilities creating barriers that the entities couldn't penetrate. But Alina could see the strain on their faces. They weren't ready for this. The transformation protocols were incomplete, their understanding of their new abilities still limited. "Status report," she commanded, her voice carrying harmonic frequencies that strengthened the resolve of those around her. The predecessors' genetic modifications had awakened leadership abilities that went beyond mere charisma. She could literally resonate with the energy patterns of other species now. "The Jupiter defense grid is holding," reported Commander Zix, their crystalline form now threaded with streams of living light. "But the entities are learning. Each attack is more coordinated than the last." Through the quantum blast viewport, Alina could see the massive shapes of the entities trying to manifest in normal space. They weren't truly visible, more like holes in reality, spaces where the natural laws of the universe simply ceased to function. Looking at them caused physical pain, a deep wrongness that spoke to how far the predecessors had fallen from their original nature. New incursion detected. Lyra's warning came just as the facility's sensors screamed in alarm. A massive distortion was forming directly beneath them, in Europa's liquid core. "They're trying to use the moon's magnetic field to stabilize their manifestation," Dr. Rodriguez called from his station, his hands flying over holographic controls. Like all the humans in the facility, his transformation had enhanced his natural abilities. In his case, understanding of the predecessor's technology had become almost intuitive. Alina made a split-second decision. Begin Protocol Omega. The chamber fell silent. Protocol Omega was their last resort, a full integration of all transformed species with the defense platforms themselves. The predecessors' records had warned that attempting it with incomplete transformation protocols could be fatal to everyone involved. "Ma'am," Rodriguez started to protest, but Alina cut him off. "Look at the readings, James. They're not just attacking Earth or this facility. Similar incursions are being reported across the galaxy. If we don't act now, we won't get another chance." She turned to address the assembled defenders, her transformed DNA allowing her to broadcast on frequencies that all species could understand simultaneously. Everything the predecessors left us, the technology, the genetic modifications, the defense platforms, it was all leading to this moment. They didn't just want us to fight their mistakes. They wanted us to succeed where they failed. The facility shuddered as another attack struck their defenses. Through their enhanced senses, everyone present could feel the entity's hunger, their desperate desire to reclaim the spark of life they had sacrificed in their pursuit of transcendence. The predecessors thought they had to choose between physical existence and higher consciousness. Alina continued. They were wrong. True transcendence comes from synthesis, from bringing together different ways of being and thinking. That's why they chose all of us, why they encoded different aspects of their defense systems into different species. Understanding dawned in the eyes and sensory organs of those around her. The predecessors hadn't just created weapons. They had created the potential for a new form of existence, one that could bridge the gap between physical and energy states while maintaining the essential qualities that made life worth living. "Begin interface protocols," Alina commanded. Around the chamber, transformed beings moved to connection points that had been waiting for this moment for millions of years. "Remember what makes you unique. Hold on to your identity, your emotions, your connections to others. That's what the entities lost, and that's what will save us." The defense platform hummed to life as dozens of species joined their consciousness with its systems. Alina felt her awareness expand, connecting with every transformed being in the facility. She sensed Zix's crystalline precision, Lyra's plasma state intuition, Rodriguez's human ingenuity, all flowing together, strengthening each other. Through their combined senses, they could see the true scale of the entity's assault. Thousands of reality distortions were forming throughout the solar system. The very fabric of space-time was beginning to fray under their relentless attempts to manifest. "Hold on to who you are," Alina broadcast as the integration deepened. "We're not fighting to destroy the entities. We're fighting to show them another way." The defense platform's energy began to pulse in new patterns as the transformed beings merged their abilities with its ancient systems. Crystalline matrices interface with plasma states, while human consciousness provided the adaptability to use these combinations in ways the predecessors had never imagined. Just as the integration reached its peak, the entities launched their strongest attack yet. The barrier between dimensions ripped open, and the first entity fully manifested in normal space. It was beautiful and terrible, a being of pure energy and thought, unfettered by physical limitations. But its beauty was cold, lifeless, like a perfect mathematical equation that had forgotten why numbers mattered in the first place. Alina felt the entity's attention focus on their facility. She sensed its hunger, its desperate desire to reclaim what it had lost. But she also sensed something else: recognition. The transformed defenders weren't just using the predecessors' technology. They had become what the predecessors had originally sought to be: beings that could bridge multiple states of existence while retaining their essential spark. The entity attacked, its energy weapons capable of unraveling the atomic bonds of matter itself. But the combined consciousness of the transformed defenders responded with something the entities had forgotten how to create: innovation. Crystalline barriers absorbed and redirected energy in impossible ways. Plasma states created new forms of matter that existed between physical and energy phases, and humanity's gift for adaptation let them combine these abilities in ways that even the predecessors hadn't envisioned. For a moment, everything hung in balance. The entity's cold perfection clashed against the messy, vibrant, collaborative consciousness of the defenders. Then Alina felt something she never expected: curiosity from the entity. The first emotion it had experienced in millions of years. "Now," she broadcast, "show them what they lost, and how to reclaim it." The defense platform blazed with power as every transformed being poured their unique essence into a single purpose: not to destroy the entity, but to remind it of what it had once been, and what it could be again. The entity's perfect mathematical existence began to waver as long-forgotten memories stirred. Emotions it had engineered out of itself began to resurface. And in that moment of connection, Alina understood the final truth of the predecessor's plan. They hadn't created guardians to destroy their mistakes. They had created the means for their mistakes to find redemption. But as the entity struggled with its awakening emotions, more dimensional rifts were opening throughout the solar system. The war for existence was far from over, and its true cost was just beginning to become clear. Evolution's choice. The transformed defenders of Europa watched in awe as the first entity struggled with its reawakening emotions. Its perfect mathematical structure wavered, energy patterns shifting chaotically as millions of years of suppressed feelings crashed through its consciousness. But they had no time to celebrate this small victory. Across the galaxy, thousands more entities were tearing their way into normal space. Alina Santos, her transformed DNA now fully integrated with the defense platform, felt the strain on reality itself. The entity's mass manifestation was threatening to unravel the fundamental forces that held the universe together. "We can't fight them all," Zix observed, their crystalline consciousness resonating through the shared network of transformed defenders. "Even with the defense platforms, there are too many." "We don't need to fight them," Alina responded, an idea forming in her transformed mind. "We just need to remind them of who they used to be." All of them, simultaneously. Through their combined consciousness, she shared her plan with the other defenders. It was audacious, probably impossible, and entirely human in its refusal to accept apparent limitations. The other species' transformed consciousness added their own insights, refining and improving the concept in real time. The Nexus, Rodriguez's thoughts, joined the network. It wasn't just a message system or a defense platform. It was a template for what the predecessors should have become, a way to transcend physical limitations while maintaining the essential qualities that make us conscious beings. "And we've achieved what they couldn't," Lyra added, her plasma state consciousness pulsing with understanding. "Not by abandoning our nature, but by combining our different ways of existing." Alina focused their shared consciousness on the entity before them, which was still struggling with its reawakening emotions. Through their enhanced senses, they could see patterns forming in its energy structure, patterns that echoed the very qualities the predecessors had engineered out of themselves. The defense platforms she broadcast to all transformed beings across the galaxy. "They're not weapons, they're transmitters. The predecessors left us everything we needed to help them find their way back." Understanding rippled through the galactic network of transformed consciousness. Every defense platform, every piece of predecessor technology they'd discovered, had been leading to this moment. Not to a war, but to a reconciliation. "Begin full spectrum broadcast," Alina commanded. Around Europa, the defense platform's energy signatures change, no longer defensive but radiating outward in complex patterns that carried something more powerful than any weapon: memory. Through their combined consciousness, they began transmitting the very qualities that made each species unique: human adaptability and emotion, meridian precision and harmony, Varaxian intuition and energy manipulation, all flowing together, creating a template for existence that bridged the gap between physical and energy states. The entity before them resonated with the transmission, its structure beginning to shift. Where before it had been a perfect but lifeless pattern of energy, now it began to develop new complexities, the capacity for growth, for change, for connection. Across the galaxy, other transformed defenders activated their platforms, creating a network of transmission points. Each broadcast carried the combined essence of multiple species, showing the entities a path back to true consciousness. But the entities' resistance was fierce. Many fought against the reawakening of emotion, their fear of imperfection causing them to attack with even greater fury. Reality itself groaned under the strain of their manifestation attempts. "They're afraid," Alina realized. For the first time in millions of years, they're experiencing fear. Fear of losing their perfect but empty existence. "Then we show them something stronger than fear," Rodriguez suggested. Through their shared consciousness, he began transmitting not just thoughts or emotions, but memories. The joy of discovery, the warmth of connection, the satisfaction of overcoming challenges, the beauty of creating something new. Other defenders joined in, each species sharing their own unique experiences and perspectives. The broadcast became a symphony of consciousness, demonstrating that true transcendence came not from abandoning life's complexities, but from embracing them. The effect rippled through space-time. Entity after entity paused in their assault, their perfect mathematical existence disturbed by echoes of what they had once been. Some tried to retreat, but the network of broadcasts had created a resonance field throughout the galaxy. There was no escaping the reminder of their own lost humanity. Through their combined consciousness, Alina felt the moment the balance shifted. The first entity, still hovering above Europa, made a choice. Its energy structure began to reform, not into its original physical form, but into something new. a state of existence that maintained consciousness and emotion while transcending physical limitations. Others followed, each entity choosing between their current state of empty perfection and the chance to reclaim what they had lost. Some chose to remain as they were, retreating to the spaces between galaxies. But more and more chose to embrace the change, their energy forms taking on new patterns that pulsed with rekindled emotion and awareness. The strain on reality began to ease as fewer entities attempted to manifest. Those that had chosen to change helped stabilize the dimensional barriers, their new form of existence no longer requiring them to tear holes in space-time. As the crisis subsided, Alina felt a new consciousness touch their network, the transformed entities, reaching out not to attack or drain, but to connect. Their thoughts carried something that had been absent for millions of years: gratitude. "We understand now," they communicated. The predecessor's mistake wasn't in seeking transcendence, but in believing it required the sacrifice of what made us conscious beings. "You have shown us another way." The transformed defenders began disconnecting from the defense platforms, their mission accomplished in a way none of them had expected. As Alina's consciousness returned to her individual form, she noticed that the changes wrought by the predecessor's genetic modifications hadn't reverted. They had all been permanently altered by the experience. "What happens now?" Lyra asked, her plasma form still showing traces of the network integration. Alina looked out at the galaxy through her enhanced senses. The entities that had chosen to change were already beginning to share their vast knowledge and experience, but in a way that respected and celebrated the diversity of existence, rather than trying to enforce a single perfect state. "Now we do what humanity has always done," she smiled. "We adapt. We grow. We learn from each other. The predecessors chose us not because we were perfect, but because we understood something they had forgotten. That true evolution isn't about becoming pure energy or pure thought. It's about finding new ways to be conscious, to connect, to exist." Through the quantum glass viewport, she could see the transformed entity still hovering above Europa. Its energy pattern had stabilized into something beautiful, complex, imperfect, alive with possibility. Just like the myriad species that had worked together to save not just themselves, but the very beings that had threatened them. The galactic community would never be the same. The barrier between physical and energy beings had been bridged, creating possibilities that none of them could yet imagine. But they would face those possibilities together, each species contributing their unique perspectives and abilities to the next stage of cosmic evolution. Humanity had proven itself worthy of the predecessor's choice, not by being superior, but by showing that true transcendence comes from cooperation, from synthesis, from embracing the beautiful complexity of conscious existence in all its forms. The galaxy's future was no longer about perfect mathematical existence or pure physical reality. It was about finding the harmony between all ways of being. And that was an adventure humanity was more than ready to help lead.